Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this very special celebration of Daily Maverick 168, the launch of our new weekly newspaper coming out for the first time this Saturday. I'm Styli Charalambous, the CEO and co-founder of Daily Maverick, and thank you for joining us today as we run through the crazy decision to launch a newspaper in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. I am joined today and very fortunate to have some special people in our journey to print along with us today to share some of their experiences and their insights in this journey. Heather Robertson and John Bradshaw. I'm going to leave it to these two awesome people to introduce themselves and why they're here today. Heather?
Hi, I'm Heather Robertson. I'm the editor of Daily Maverick 168, and I'm here to talk about the journey that we've gone through lockdown to produce this amazing and innovative product.
Thanks, Heather, and we're going to go through some interesting stories, I'm sure. And John Bradshaw, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for including us in what's a very special day. So we're proud to be a little part of it.
Yeah, thanks, John. And as head of marketing at Pick n Pay, it's great that you've managed to find the time to join us today. It's been an incredible partnership working with you and your team, getting to this point. It's been long, it's been interesting, but it's been fun and rewarding. And we're going to get into some of those stories. So we're going to kick off things, just a little bit of what you can expect for today. We're going to have a quick poll now. We're going to ask you guys about your shopping behaviors in lockdown, what's changed. How much more online shopping have you guys been doing? We're interested to see that for a number of reasons. And then we're going to jump into some extracts of the business case that we put together, putting together some of the ideas and some of the reasons behind our move into print. And then we're going to open up the floor for discussion. We're going to have some interactions between Heather and John and myself. We're going to take some questions from the audience. And then we've got a very special announcement at the end of this, where we announce the 126 stores and where you can find the Pick n Pay stores that are being included in launch. So if we could just check with the webinar elves team, if we could put that poll up into the chat for our attendees and guests to participate with us, and as we kick off into the business case presentation. So for those who weren't part of this and weren't privy to this business case was something we presented internally to our team. It got to a stage that we were getting so many "why the hell are we doing this" looks in the passages of our offices that we figured we needed to share some of our thinking. So even internally, there were a lot of questions about this brave and contrarian move and why we were going back to the future in a time when everyone else was running away. And I think these graphs are an indication of what we've been seeing and why there was so much skepticism. These are the quarterly one circulation numbers from some of the major weekly titles. And so we can see over the last 5 years, all shaping down and to the right, not the kind of graphs that you really want to be seeing in the industry. And these go back for the last decade. We've seen the decline of certain news titles happening, and also these are global trends that we're noticing in other major markets of the world. If we break that down into actual numbers, we can see that some of our colleagues at and some of these other print titles have experienced 45% declines over the last 5 years, and some even as big as 68%. Heather, you've been in the industry for a while. You've been the deputy editor of some major titles and editor of some major titles around the country. What's your take on why we've seen such big declines in print circulations?
One of the biggest reasons is the move to online sources for news. With the invention of the smartphone, a lot of people are actually accessing the news on smartphones, and I think Daily Maverick has been a great beneficiary of this, because a lot of people actually access Daily Maverick's long-form journalism on smartphones. And then the other reason is I think there's been a big loss of trust in print media. For in particular, one of the major publications, I think there was loss of trust because of what had happened with the Sunday Times and the SARS rogue unit story. And I think when something like that affects one publication, it has a ripple effect on many others on the industry as a whole and on journalism as a profession. So there's a lot of work that has been done and is still being done to actually regain that trust. But when that breakdown in trust happens at the same time when people are shifting to digital sources for their news, it's a very difficult trust to rebuild.
Yeah, I'm glad it's not just our fault that there's declining circulations in print titles. John, are you seeing similar sort of patterns from the sales numbers at Pick n Pay for reading material?
Yeah, absolutely, and not just on the newspaper, also on the magazine titles. So yes, I think if your point is building up to that, this seems completely insane. I think it's certainly supported by the numbers we're seeing in our business as well.
Okay, Heather, you mentioned something earlier about trust and the move to online as the two biggest reasons, and I thought this was a very interesting slide, which shows this is a group of 40 titles that shows their print circulation numbers in the red over 5 years, and the digital audiences of those same 40 titles over the same period of time. And so you can see this massive growth in online and this decline in print. And I think if any slide summarizes the paradox or the conundrum of being a news publisher in this day and age, it's this one. It's the fact that despite massive circulation numbers and reaching new digital audiences, making it work at a business model level, monetizing those digital audiences has been the challenge, because as we know, we all expected the print revenues to come back to us in digital, and that didn't end up happening because a certain Google and Facebook phenomenon was happening where 90% of digital ad spend was going via or to two of those big Silicon Valley customers' services. So what is quite interesting is following the pilot study that we did, we sent out the pilot edition that we launched, we sent out a survey to people who picked up copies of the pilot. And so we had an incredible number of responses. We had 643 responses. And one of the questions we asked them was, why do you think newspaper readership has declined in South Africa? And interestingly, those people who participated in the survey and collected the pilot put the decline in the quality and trust of newspapers as the biggest reason that they were no longer themselves picking up newspapers, followed by the prevalence of digital behaviors and the move to online consumption. And an interesting thing that we noticed as well was looking at two examples, the P Express and the City Press circulation numbers. So as fine exports of Port Elizabeth, Heather, you and I will be familiar with the P Express. And what's interesting is to look at going back 5 years, they had very similar circulation numbers. And you can see that the P Express in blue kept a very flat and consistent circulation number. They obviously figured out what their optimum circulation is for the amount of revenue that they're able to generate, whereas the City Press is a paid for title, amongst other reasons and aspects, has seen that 65% decline over a period of time. So all these things, all these factors, we're kind of going into the different permutations for how we were going to build a business model around this offering. This was a piece of research that we participate in every year. It's called the Brand Map Survey, where 30,000 digital consumers participate in the survey. It's a hell of a online survey. It's about 250 questions. And one of these questions caught our eye. It asked people to rate the level of newspaper reading and activity that they had compared to a year ago. And this was interesting for us because given that the declining print circulation numbers, especially for the bigger, well-known paid for titles, was declining, this was interesting to see that 82% of our readers and that of the biggest news site in the country, News 24, 82% of people were still picking up newspapers and reading them, but we were seeing that a big chunk of those, 34% for us and 38% for News 24, weren't buying newspapers. They weren't paying for them, but they were still reading them either as a free sheet, collecting them at an office, or collecting them at an airport. And so this was again starting to sort of give us some direction in terms of what a Daily Maverick newspaper could look like and how we would need to get that out into the world. So this is just some stats of the newspaper market, advertising after discounts. These are just our estimates of what that looks like. And so we can see that the total ad market, the ad spend for print over the last 5 years has declined somewhat in line with those circulation numbers, but by all means is still quite a substantial market. And if we look at the percentage, it's still about 15% of overall ad spend. And with the murkiness of digital spend out there, it's estimated to be the same as digital. So still a sizable market should we decide to enter it. John, I'm going to take you back to a coffee meeting that we had in Woodstock. It must have been about a year and a half ago. I remember it was still dark when we got there. It was before work. And I said, John, let's go for coffee. I've got something to ask you. Did you have any idea what I was going to ask you that day and what I was going to pitch to you?
No idea. And I certainly don't think I could have guessed.
Yeah. What were the first 3 words that sprang to mind when I said to you we wanted to start a newspaper?
The polite ones. Madness. Just sounded crazy. But I think there's also a bit of me that I always have time for these things that appear mad. So I would like to think that I also thought it was possibly genius. There's a Peter Thiel who in his book 0 to 1 talks about how real entrepreneurs believe something that everyone else thinks is false, and they turn out to be right. And so I try to keep open to that small possibility. So that's what I would say. Insane, but possibly genius.
Yeah, I remember leaving that day, and I think the final words you said to me, this is so crazy, it might just work. And that's pretty much, I think, been the story of Daily Maverick in our 10.5 years of existence. Just some more data from that brand map survey. People ask us why Pick n Pay. We can see that there's a fairly even spread of what people consider to be the most used grocery store amongst our readers. 31% of our readers selected Pick n Pay as their most used store, but a fairly even spread. And what was also interesting for us in that survey is that we can see that people use convenience, special offers, and product range and loyalty programs as the reason behind their choice of store. And so that relationship with Smartshopper, that opportunity to create value and to provide a win-win-win situation was something that we felt would also hold us well as we launch into the market. We were inspired by the Fresh Living model and the success that you guys saw there. As people know, the Daily Maverick 168 is 20 Rand cover price and free to smart shoppers. Part of that was also because we wanted to grow and reach new audiences. John, I don't know if people know how big the Smartshopper program is. Maybe you can share some insights of what sort of numbers you guys are dealing with in that program.
Yeah, so it's over 7.5 million people, unique people swipe their Smartshopper card in a year. So it's really huge. It's 2/3 of our sales. It's a really big part of what we do. So yeah, pretty big audience.
Yeah, and for us, it was the ability to kind of reach those new audiences in this partnership that we considered to be a win for us and a win for Pick n Pay and a win for smart shoppers, and obviously a win for our printers. There were not too many new titles coming to there, and I think that for me is also quite important, as the future of business is one that is more collaborative and where people can people engage in these scenarios where you bring your assets and reach to the table, we bring ours, and we come up with something that benefits the market. And another one that we engaged with was the Uber deal for Maverick Insiders, where Maverick Insiders get Uber vouchers back every month for as long as they contribute 150 Rand to our membership program. John, some people aren't aware of the amount of work that's been going on behind the scenes and what you guys are doing to help us launch this. Maybe you can share just a little bit about all those efforts that your team's been busy with in preparation for Saturday.
Sure. Well, it's just, I feel that it's an unfair question because the hard bit is making a newspaper. All we do is get it to the customers. So I think we've been trying to make sure that when customers come into the store, they're going to not miss that this is one of the participating stores that has a Daily Maverick. We think it'll be pretty exciting for people. We want to make sure our customers know about it. We want to identify the kind of customers that might not be Daily Maverick readers but would like to read it. And so really just trying to make sure that everyone who would want to know does know about it, and that the stores are ready to receive the newspaper and put it out for customers to get when they come into store.
Yeah, I think, Heather, we've seen as we've dissected the results of the pilot project, just how much data has been influencing our decisions about which stores to go to and which variable has been available to us in terms of reader votes and past newspaper sales data, for example. Has that been a new experience for you as someone putting together a new title together, the amount of data that we've been able to work with?
Yeah, it's been incredible getting the data so fast. I mean, generally with newspaper circulations, working for a weekly newspaper, you get the information a week later. And we were able to, because of the links to Smartshopper, we were able to get it like pretty fast and able to make the decisions about where the bulk of the newspapers would be sent to. The other interesting use of data is the fact that Daily Maverick is still digital first, and so we have a pretty clear idea about what stories our readers are really interested in, and that also guides my decision making and our team's decision making in how to curate a newspaper that readers will be interested in.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Sorry, John, we'll get into that sort of content mix decision. John, you had something there you wanted to add?
Well, I think it's worth talking a little bit about what you were saying on the use of data, because I think people quite rightly are very nervous about the data they put into the world and how it's used. And for me, this is just such an example of how you'd want a company to use your data. So with the Daily Maverick and with our other partners that we deal with, our manufacturers and suppliers, we would never, ever provide people's personal information. We aggregate it up, we look at the trends, we look at the kind of people that like things in order to improve Pick and Pay. So that's what I think people would want us to use this Smartshopper data for, to try and make a better shopping experience, to try and make a better newspaper, and to try get the right products to the right people. So it's that anonymized, aggregated data that can be really powerful in improving a newspaper, improving a supermarket for customers. And that, I think, gets the balance right between keeping people's privacy, but using the data to improve what they experience.
Yeah, and also the other important point is not just being a slave to that data, but using it to support some of the good human decisions that need to be made, and not to be just ruled by that. And I think that's the exciting opportunity that I think data and collaborative data can have for businesses. So I think just in order to wrap up, some of the reasons why we are moving into print, we wanted to create this curated service to our readers who are feeling overwhelmed by this deluge of digital content. And I think even us as publishers of quite a lot of long form journalism, we're also sensing that there's just too much out there. And so this is a way to give people a curated finished product with potentially articles that they might not click to read on demand otherwise. I think moving to print from a digital first perspective is a lot easier than being, let's say, a monthly magazine that needs to move to digital and to become relevant from publishing once a month to then move into the hourly publishing space and trying to build a business around that. And I think a lot of publications around the world have struggled to do that, and that's why the digital transformation of those publishers has been so difficult, and why we've seen so many of them fail at that as well. There's also a backlash against the screen that I think that's happening, and I think which is quite ironic given that we're on one right now, speaking to a lot of people. But I think if we give ourselves the opportunity to step away from a screen, from a tiny screen and a device, and to rekindle some of those weekend reading rituals, that was something that came up very strongly in our research and our one-on-one conversations with people. It's also easier for us to compete in print than it is with the likes of Google and Facebook. And for us, reorganizing our structures and reorganizing our workflows, the marginal cost to publish this newspaper is a lot less than, again, doing it the other way around. So for those of you who had the question, why on earth are we crazy enough to move into print publishing, I'm hoping that some of these some of these slides will give you a little bit of insight into why we did that. So just to go back to that poll, John, I don't know if you guys can see this. We asked people, have you done grocery shopping online since lockdown? Given that we are a digital first publisher and that we are online at the moment, there might be a little bit of bias in this segment. But interesting to see, 48% yes, 51% no. Any surprises there, John?
Yeah, well, for such a digital savvy audience, I would have expected to be high. I mean, we have seen huge take up of our online delivery. I mean, in the first couple of weeks, you couldn't get a slot for weeks, and they quickly moved to double and triple and quadruple the amount of slots available. So we've seen a huge take up in the online business. So I think it's pretty interesting to see how that shift has happened. And probably like news consumption, people will have a blended mix of digital and physical consumption as they find something that works for their lifestyle.
Heather, you had an interesting start with the Daily Maverick team. You had your own interesting coffee shop conversation with Branko when he invited you to have a little chat and to pitch an idea to you at his extended office in Hyde Park at another grocery store chain that we shan't name. What was your impression from that first meeting when he pitched the idea?
I thought he was stark raving mad. I really did. I couldn't understand how someone who for 10 years had pioneered a really successful digital site would want to venture into dying print. But slowly but surely managed to convince me. And now here I am. And I mean, some of the reasons that we didn't actually express the reasons overtly, but I think over the last 3 months, I started working with Daily Maverick a month after lockdown. I started in April. So I didn't get to have face-to-face contact with anyone, not a soul. And so we produced a dummy, we produced a pilot. We've had a lot of debates and creative work together, totally and completely remotely. I mean, all of us worked from our home offices, which in my case is in the middle of the open plan lounge and dining room with the kids playing in the background and doing homeschooling. So I think it's absolutely incredible that we managed to achieve this far, and got to get to know each other and trust each other, because it's very difficult, as you can understand, never having working in the same physical space as other newspapers would do.
Well, I think everyone can appreciate, hats off to you and the rest of the team for, designing this thing, putting it together remotely, and also having to deal with Branko on a daily basis. I think all those are massive kudos. Kudos to you. I've been doing it for 10.5 years, and I know both the pleasure and the pain of that experience. So. What were, apart from working remotely, I think, what were the biggest challenges of putting this together from scratch? As opposed to kind of coming into an existing title, how did you go about designing what goes into this paper, given that we only have limited amount of pages to print, and such an amazing vastness of content to choose from?
Okay, so it all starts off with how do we create a print product that remains true to the essence of Daily Maverick online. And so I have read and tried to think about how could I recreate this in print. Early on, I contacted Cassie Naidu, who's an art director. I actually worked with Cassie when I was a deputy editor of Elle magazine when Elle magazine launched, and my brief from Styli and Branko was like, make it. I mean, they are crazy. They said the best newspaper in the world ever. So I thought, like, how the hell am I going to do this? And be different, like have a design and a content mix that is different from this and that, and lets us stand out on those Pick n Pay shelves. And that's why I consulted Cassie, because I know she reads and thinks deeply and is super creative. And then slowly but surely we built more of a team to help with the design. I have Jocelyn Adamson, who has been a newspaper designer, but moved into designing annual reports and various other things through her own consultancy, and slowly built up under a former colleague of mine, Quincy Satsi, who I worked with in the former Times Media. He was a great designer on the now defunct Times newspaper. So the decision making was stay true to the values, stay true to what we all call the secret sauce of the Daily Maverick. So kind of get inside Branko's head, because that's where the secret sauce gets mixed. And not always a very calm or kind experience, but actually always fun. So I've really enjoyed the banter and the debates that led to the ultimate end product. But I think very important for me, the Daily Maverick is known for its investigations, known for, in particular, the Gupta leaks, Greg Malinovich's Maracana story. So it's like, keep that. It's also known for its very well-respected, incredible journalists, names like Marian Tam, Richard Poplak, Feral Hafaji. So, like, keep them in it, but also be careful to actually have a balance. And sometimes there's an amazing wealth of lifestyle content on Daily Maverick that I think sometimes gets lost with the big stories that we hear. And so what we looked at is like actually create a tabloid magazine with that sort of content, which is very reflective and considered, but also bright and talks about other aspects of life that are not just about the bad guys. And then also to bring in, we've just over a year now, Maverick Citizen with Mark Hayward and Ansu Tam and their team, they become part of the Maverick family. And they bring a completely different flavor. A lot of the COVID-19 coverage has actually come from that team because they've got great experience with health journalism. But also they bring in a consideration of civil society and really the kind of news of South Africans who are not the bad guys, South Africans who are actually doing pretty amazing stuff. And so in deciding what to put in every week's mix of this newspaper, it's about a balance between, it's been a watchdog, but also reflecting those in our society who are really inspiring and actually doing incredible, amazing stuff, whether it be on the sporting field or, as I said, in our Maverick life, or the amazing content coming from our Burning Planet team, who are like really at the coalface of writing about climate change and an environment, or from Maverick Citizen. So from this whole Daily Maverick family, I really have a luxury of choice. Mm-hmm. And the hardest decision is like what to leave out.
I think one of the questions that's coming through is how much fresh and new content that hasn't been published before are we going to see in the paper? Can you give us any indication of what that'll look like on I mean, I know we don't work with hard and fast rules, but how much fresh content and unpublished content or previously unpublished content are we going to see coming out in the paper?
Our front page story will be new. So it'll be about 50%. 50% would have been previously published, but we're also repurposing it, remember. The difference between a newspaper and online, which our journalists in the Maverick family have realized, is that you can't write forever in a newspaper. It's finite. You have to actually try and say what you mean in a limited space. And for me, there is an art and a craft in editing, and there's an art and craft in actually writing to length, which is what you're going to get in the newspaper. Sometimes articles are so long that you'd get to perhaps the 600th word and you go like, okay, I'm going to move on to the next article. In a newspaper, we're forced to actually curate and edit the content, working with our journalists and with absolute respect for their voice, their research, their knowledge, but to bring it into a more concise format that's more readable and accessible. And also, I think we've got an amazing team of designers, and we've just hired Felix and Langamandla as our photographic editor. So we will have amazing pictures and also graphics and infographics to complement the storytelling that our team of writers are doing.
So not the long form after long form. It's going to be interspersed with a lot of visual journalism and short stuff. John, we did a pilot edition a couple of weeks ago. We were very happy with the results. Were there any insights and trends from there that gave you hope and optimism that our madness was justified?
Yeah, well, fantastic to see. I'm loving listening to Heather describe it. I never thought of newspapers as being better for people with short attention spans, right? But of course, it's the too long didn't read, right? That's the great part about a newspaper. Your eye drifts over it, you pick up the headline, you dive in there. That's a fantastic insight. Yeah, it was a huge success. I mean, we had some funny moments. Briefly on the morning of the Saturday, we saw the Daily Maverick for sale in a Woolworths, where it had been delivered to the wrong place. So, that's why we pilot things, right? That was quite surprising. But no, brilliant to see it take up, brilliant to see the breadth of appeal. It wasn't all the stores that I would have guessed that absolutely nailed it. But just in those stores where it took off, it caught like wildfire. I think in our Constantia store, 1 in 6 customers that we saw that day picked up a Daily Maverick. So it really did have huge broad appeal across our whole customer base, really. So I think that bodes very well for this Saturday when we go large.
And I think just to share a little bit of insights around how we selected those stores, those 10 stores in Joburg and 10 stores in Cape Town. And the reason we did the pilot was to test a lot of these variables and assumptions that we had. And, we'd gathered, I think at that stage, we'd gathered about 15,000 votes from our readers who had selected the stores that they would like us to launch with. We used that data. We got data from your team around which stores do well for newspaper and magazine sales. And then we had some wild cards, and then we were limited to Joburg and Cape Town. So it was this sort of moving Tetris exercise to try and figure out, what sort of volumes we could try and move. And it was interesting to see, which ones sold out early, which ones had leftover stock. But I think on the whole, almost all the stores moved, quite a few copies of the paper. That when we did the next round of calculations and choosing which of those stores would make up our 25,000 launch circulation, some of the pilot stores, we had to cut back on the volume of copies because we need to make sure that our spread around each of those regions, we would be able to get those limited copies into those other stores, and then we had a nice mix of that. But I think it was a hell of an interesting exercise to do that pilot and to get that data back and to see what variable and what lever you can pull. And see how that influences and what you guys were doing with some of your direct marketing and your in-store activations and where that could go. I think for us, as we were planning the 25,000 launch, we were kind of going, geez, we definitely need a bigger boat here. We could have gone out with a 50,000 launch copy and twice as many pages. Heather, don't get any ideas. You're not getting twice as many pages just yet. I know you and our editor-in-chief Branko would love that, but it's like it's walking this fine balance of it is an ad-supported model. We saw 96% of all sales were Smartshoppers, so people got their copy for free. So this is an ad play, and we saw in April, in the hardest lockdown period, 70% of print advertising got suspended, and so there was a massive drop off. And so we're waiting for those advertisers that freeze to sort of thaw and to come back, and hopefully people see an innovative and brave model that's growing, and gives them reason to keep supporting the industry. John, I mentioned to you earlier that I was at the printers yesterday going through another dummy run and being given the tour of that, and I couldn't help but notice all the big Pick n Pay print inserts that we're getting ready to get inserted and go out there. Do they work for you? I mean, obviously, if they're still being printed, they must do something for your business.
Yeah, no, it is amazing, right? Certainly, you guys know a lot about news consumption. I know a little bit about how people like to get their deals, and people love to get their deals in these physical leaflets that go into the house. And when we've done tests where we pull back a bit on them, or we don't go in the newspapers as much, we really notice that in our sales. So not everyone, but certainly a large mass of South Africans still like to lay out the leaflets, make sure they're getting value for the money, decide where they go, and then pick their store. And it's actually a behavior we've seen more of during lockdown. I think all the retailers have seen a decline in frequency as people shop less, but they consolidate their shops into going and shopping in a single place. So for us, it's been really, really important to make sure we're providing our customers good value and then communicate that value to them. And the way we found it most effective is, I've got some behind me. These I thought I'd just sneak in some advertising while we were talking. It's an ad-supported model here as well. Just really making sure that we had the value, we had the big deals, and then getting them through. And we found printed leaflets continue to be a really, really effective way to do that.
Heather, we've had some questions around putting together a weekly print edition, and what is the job that this weekly print edition needs to do from people's news, from their news diet, given the immediacy of breaking news on digital, and how that informs what we put into it.
Now, as I said, we are informed, but obviously by our team, and I work very closely with Branko and the digital team. So we informed by what's the most important and significant stories that we think need to be told. And we inform by, as I said, our data that we get every single day from our analytics. So it's a combination of our we call it our news spidey sense, as well as of data from what people are reading. And I noticed a question in the chat. It's saying like, okay, we get our news real time immediately online, and newspapers seem dated. So this is the difference. We're not going to pretend to do breaking news ever in this newspaper, and I don't think any newspaper, be it a daily or weekly, could ever promise to do that since digital news has actually become the staple. And not only digital news, I mean, people are sharing news instantly on Twitter and on Facebook and on WhatsApp. I mean, I get my local news now quicker on WhatsApp than on a local newspaper. So the way we digest and consume news has totally transformed. So what is our role? What is our role as a digital news site, and then as a print newspaper? And our role, I think, is to join the dots and to actually, get the story behind the story, get the why behind the things that break all the time, all around us. It's about help us make sense of what the heck is happening in various public spheres of life, be it politics or sports or civil society, or in entertainment. So that's what we should be doing as journalists on all the different platforms. And what we are doing in the newspaper is exactly what is what Maverick has been doing online. But we're going to curate and we're going to choose and select essentially what we consider the most important and the most balanced offering for readers to read on a weekend.
And I think the name DM168, which is a reflection of the number of hours in the week, and we joke internally, it's the number of hours that you'll need to read through all the content in the newspaper by the time the next edition comes out. And I think that's where that.
The number of hours guys at Maverick make us all work. Let's just put that down.
And I think the printed product lends itself to long form analysis and investigations and opinions and op-eds, and we knew that 5 years ago when we first had this idea, it was rumbling around and we were kicking around. It's like print would be a great avenue for the kind of content that we built our brand around, and most people won't know, but we had actually reached out to some incumbent publishers to try and collaborate with them, and that never went anywhere. Eventually, we had to take control of our own destiny, and I'm glad that we did. But John, there've been a couple of questions here. I know that in our launch phase of DM168 that we're starting with Pick n Pay exclusively, and we're starting with in-store stuff. I think a lot of people would love to see, and people who, maybe some people who are worried about crowds and spaces, to see it being available online. How far away is the integration of Smartshopper into the online space? And apologies if this is putting you on the spot.
No. I've seen the suggestion popping up there. I think it's a great idea. I just love the fact that people would like a physical version of what used to be a digital news source, physically delivered via a digital channel. So I think it's brilliant. And we'll have to work out how we make it work. But let's launch this weekend in store. But I love that idea. Let's work out how we start including it with some of the online deliveries as well.
Styli, can I go back to a question? Because I noticed that Ashok Lachman is actually a former colleague of mine, asked a question, and I know where he's coming from. A lot of newspapers reduced the length of the stories and had a lot of small little tidbits, okay? And his question was, are we going to have as long stories that go on and on like the Mail and Guardian, or are we going to have smaller bites? And I think we need to look at why what we're doing is counterintuitive and why it is going to work. We are going to have longer stories, but obviously not as long as they are online. But I think the difference between us and the Mail and Guardian is what I spoke about when I said we are going to actually have a balance. We're not going to hit you over the head with the one long story after another. We're going to have a mix of stories, and we're going to actually have visual breaks, and we're going to also have thought breaks, and we're going to have opinions on those news pages. So we're not going to write through the paper. So no, we're not going to give you little bits of information that may leave you totally unsatisfied. We're actually going to satisfy you and answer your questions with our long form journalism.
Thanks, Heather. I did want to get back to that question. And I think it's also going to be an evolution, right? We're going to be monitoring our performance. We're going to be asking readers who voted for their feedback. We're going to ask them to rate the newspaper. We're going to ask them what their thoughts were on international versus local content, short form versus long form, visual, rate our visuals. And I think we're going to be continuously monitoring that. And this product, this model, this content mix is going to evolve over time. Hopefully the paper will get bigger and thicker, and we'll have more space to include more of this stuff as it goes on and as the business model expands and supports itself. And this is just the start. This physical launch with Pick n Pay is just the start. It's going to go to so many exciting places.
I think that for me, that's the most exciting thing, because often I think when we say that the newspaper industry is dying, I think it's not actually dying. It's about, is it open to innovation? Is it open to actually listening to its audience and adapting to that? And I think this is the amazing thing about what we are doing. We are open to adaptation. We're open to learning from every single issue, and we're going to be listening and adapting and changing and innovating and pivoting. That's what's exciting.
Yeah, and the ability to connect some of our articles through the use of QR codes to longer form articles online, to multimedia articles that we published online. And I think as a digital first publisher, we're coming at this from a very specific angle that a lot of other publishers wouldn't have done in the past. And I know we're getting close to the reveal of the big announcement where we send out the link of those 126 stores. I'm sure a lot of people have been dying to know which of those stores are they the ones they voted for, the ones close by. Again, just to reiterate that it was kind of like playing a little bit of Simon Cowell on Pop Idol, choosing, having to make these hard decisions of who to cut and who to leave out. But it's about starting somewhere. We picked 25,000 circulation as a critical number for us. Looking at the circulations that a lot of other weekly titles are achieving now, we wanted it to make a firm statement in terms of that, this is a serious title and with ambitions to grow seriously. I think, if the pilot is anything to go by, as long as the revenue model can sustain it, there's scope for this to grow tenfold. And we're excited to see where it can go with a new take on news publishing. I'm going to ask the webinar elves to get the link ready to post in the chat of where we can see those titles. Heather, I know you guys are also very busy this week with putting together what's going to go into the paper. Are there any clues around what we can expect as the lead story on the first edition? Have you guys decided yet, or is that still in the debating room?
It's still in debate. We have 3 amazing stories that are neck and neck competing to be the lead story, and that's all I'm saying.
Oh, come on, you got to give us a little hint.
No.
And I think that's, when we look at the variety of investigative units and capabilities that we have in our team, going through the Scorpio team, Our Burning Planet, Declassified UK, which ran with the lead in the pilot, I think a story that surprised a lot of people, going with an international continental story investigation. And I think that surprised a lot of people by the fact that we didn't go with local. And I think maybe, Heather, you can speak to that, because I think it did maybe raise some eyebrows about the kind of publication that we want this to be, and not to be the navel-gazing Texans of Africa.
Look, we've got relationships across the continent, and with Declass UK, with Amabungane. We have access to some of the best investigative journalism that exists on this continent. So when we have a story that is as gobstopping as the one that we had, the CIA involvement in killings, basically in Kenya, we will run with it. And there's something that makes us different from other newspapers. We are available on the shelves for people to pick up freely. So we can decide what is important for a particular week. We don't have to decide on the basis of what is the most salacious or sensational. Often is what drives some decision making. It goes on the front page and leads to problems, and sometimes leads to having to go off to the press ombudsman. So we have the luxury of not having that pressure. So we can, and as an editorial team, and again, as I said, through engaging and also consulting and looking at all the variables that we have and information and the data to decide on what leads the paper every week.
I can share from an advertising point of view some of the content people are going to see in the paper, and some of the brands that people are going to see in the paper.
That's why people buy the papers, to look at the adverts.
Well, the interesting thing is that we've discovered, as we've sort of moved into this space now, just how much print advertising hasn't really evolved in the last 10 years. I think as digital has consumed and has sucked up all the talent in their minds a lot. I think maybe the advertising schools can comment on this, but it's almost like they're not teaching it anymore, and people are just moving into digital. But I think there's still, it works. You guys know that it works. We're seeing that with the demand in this first edition, that there is healthy demand for that. And to answer some people's question, yes, there are going to be other retailers who are going to advertise in this in Daily Maverick 168. It's not the relationship is not exclusive at an advertising level, but this working relationship and free to Smartshoppers is the basis of our exclusivity in terms with Pick n Pay and how we're launching the product. Where it goes from here is going to be determined by, I guess, how things pan out and how we're open to moving it on to bigger and better things. Some final comments before we wrap up. Heather, I know this is a big week for you.
Join us on this journey. Be critical, give us feedback, help us get better and better, because that's what we're here for. Just want to have speak to our friends, Styli, yours and mine, because we've lived in the Eastern Cape. I know there's and particularly my professors at Rhodes University, where the journalism school is. We are going to be able to access the newspaper through press reader rights, Styli, because the physical paper is not going to be available everywhere. So for those who can't access the physical paper at Pick n Pay stores, because we haven't got there yet, you are going to be able to access the paper through press reader.
Correct. Yeah, it's a point that I wanted to make, and also that our intention is to grow the number of stores and to grow the circulation as we move on through this journey. It was the Eastern Cape was slightly difficult to be able to launch with, but we are planning to get there as soon as we can, and as soon as we get the data from this first phase that can let us know comfortably how many copies we can move in a type of store in a certain location. And so we're hoping to get there quite soon, Eastern Cape. We're not going to forget about you. It's not intentionally that we've overlooked. It's just a circumstance and with regards to where the printing presses are and delivery issues, and obviously working out the demand as well. John, I want to thank you for your time, and also what a pleasure it's been working with you and your team behind the scenes to make this happen. This is, I don't think anyone thinks that you just knock on the door and you get your product into Pick n Pay. There's a lot more that happens, but I want to thank you both for your time today and for the effort that you and your team have put in, because without that, this innovative model wouldn't have been able to see the light of day. So thank you for joining us today. And if you have any final words in the last few days before we launch.
Oh, well done to you guys, and obviously I'm proud of my team that they've worked hard with you. I think it's going to be brilliant to see how it goes. We love giving stuff free to our smart shoppers, so thank you for your willingness to go and try do this. And it's been fascinating also for me to get a little glimpse of what life is like in the news world. I see everyone's got an opinion on. It's pretty much like supermarkets. I never meet someone that doesn't tell me how to improve Pick n Pay, and it seems like you've got that same thing. People want short stories, long stories, more pictures, something different on the front page. So I think it's just the anger that currently is in the chat with people from the Eastern Cape saying, "How dare you not launch in our area?" People are passionate, and that's fantastic to see. That's what we want. We want passionate insiders.
Yeah, and to all those in the Eastern Cape and people in regions or suburbs or cities that didn't manage to make it onto the launch plan, please do continue to vote. Those votes will run beyond launch. It's important for us as we look at our expansion plan and where to go to next. Places that have more votes stand a greater chance of being included in our expansion plan. So please continue to do that and to ask people to vote. A special note of thanks to Heather and John, who joined us today out of very busy schedules and this busy week leading up to launch, to the people behind Daily Maverick webinars and our live journalism efforts, and also to our Maverick insiders who are our members, who make and help keep Daily Maverick content free online, and who are also the driving force being able to make Daily Maverick 168 free and available to people and smart shoppers coming out this Saturday. So please do have a look at the stores that have been included. Do go out and support us. We're hoping that there will be enough copies for people to last at least the first couple of days of the week until the next one comes out, and to thank you all for participating and attending today and joining us on this journey.
Thank you.
Good luck, guys.